It was a quiet, cloudy afternoon. The wind moved slowly, brushing against the graves like a whisper. Rehan stood alone at the edge of the cemetery, holding a small bouquet of white flowers. His expensive black suit was wet from the morning rain. But he didn't care. His heart was heavier than the clouds above. He had not spoken much in the past month, not since the day his wife, Anaya, was buried. She was young, beautiful, full of life. And now she was gone. Rehan walked slowly between the rows of old tombstones, his footsteps soft but sure. He stopped at the one with her name on it. Anaya Rahman, loving wife, gentle soul, forever in our hearts. He kneeled down, placed the flowers gently, and looked at the grave with tired eyes. "I miss you, Anaya," he whispered. "I don't know how to keep living without you." The air was still. Rehan sat beside the grave for some time, remembering her laughter, her voice, her perfume, the way she would tease him when he was too serious. A single tear rolled down his cheek. After a few silent minutes, he stood up and brushed the dirt from his hands. He turned to walk away. But then, a sound stopped him in his tracks. It was faint, very faint, a whisper. "Rehan." He turned. Around quickly, heart beating fast. "Who's there?" he asked. But no one was around, only the graves and silence. He took a step back, confused. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe he was imagining things. He hadn't eaten since morning. Maybe. His mind was tired, but then he heard it again. "Rehan, help me." His breath caught in his chest. The voice was coming from below, from the grave, from Anaya's grave. His hands began to shake. "No, this can't be," he whispered. She's dead." Still, he moved slowly forward, eyes wide. Feet unsure, he dropped the bouquet of white flowers. Kneeling down, he placed his ear gently to the fresh soil on top of the grave. Silence, and then, "Please, help me." It was her voice, Anaya's voice, soft, weak, afraid. Rehan jumped back in shock, heart racing. He looked around again. No one, no trick, no speakers, no camera crew, just him, and a voice from the dirt. He dropped to his knees again and began clawing at the soil with his bare hands. "Anaya, I'm here, I hear you. I'm going to get you out." Tears rolled down his face as his fingers bled from digging, but the voice grew fainter. "I don't have much time." Rehan screamed for help. "Somebody, anybody, she's alive, please." A security guard from the far side of the cemetery heard him and came running. "Sir, what's wrong? What are you doing?" Rehan grabbed the man's arm like a madman. "She's alive, my wife." "I heard her voice from the grave. We have to open it, now." The guard looked at him with disbelief. "Sir, are you okay?" "That grave was sealed a month ago. Your wife passed away. I don't care what the report says. I heard her. She spoke to me." Other people started gathering. Some looked shocked. Others looked uncomfortable. Some whispered that grief had finally broken the millionaire's mind. But Rehan didn't care. He kept digging. "She's not dead. I heard her. Someone made a mistake. Or someone did this to her. She's calling me. She's alive." "I know." The whispers stopped. The crowd stepped back. Then silence again until the voice returned. This time, many heard it, faint, from below. "Rehan, please." The guard dropped his flashlight in fear. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." "I heard it too." Rehan looked up, eyes wild, dirty hands trembling. The sound had faded, but the shock remained. The voice from Anaya's grave. Rehan had heard it clearly, and now others had heard it too. The graveyard guard, a gardener, even an old woman walking. And all of them stood frozen, their eyes wide, their mouths open in disbelief. Did that really happen?" whispered the old woman. The guard, who just moments ago thought Rehan had lost his mind, now looked just as shaken. "We have to call the caretaker. We need permission to dig," he said, dialing his phone. With trembling fingers, but Rehan couldn't wait. He was already on his knees digging the grave with his hands again, blood mixing with the dirt. "Hold on, Anaya," he muttered. "I'm coming, I'm not going to lose you again." Minutes later, the graveyard caretaker arrived, an old man named Yusuf, who had been working there for over 30 years. When he heard what happened, he looked doubtful. "It's impossible," he said. "She was buried 1 month ago. Her death certificate, post-mortem. Everything is official. She died in her sleep due to a heart condition." Rehan's voice cracked. "I don't care about paperwork. I heard her. You all heard her." The crowd nodded silently. Yusuf sighed. "Fine, we'll dig. But if this is a mistake, I'll lose my job." Rehan didn't even blink. "I'll pay for 10 of your jobs. Just start digging." Soon the grave was being carefully opened. Workers removed the soil layer by layer, while Rehan stood to the side, silent, his hands clenched. The sky darkened. The wind picked up. Finally, they reached the wooden coffin. Everyone gathered close. Yusuf slowly opened the lid, and what they saw shocked everyone. Anaya's body was there, still, silent, pale, but something was wrong. Her arms were not resting across her chest. They were bent awkwardly, as if she had been scratching or trying to push the lid open. There were scratch marks on the inside of the coffin lid. Rehan's knees buckled. He fell beside the coffin. No, this can't be real." Yusuf stared at the marks. This doesn't make sense. She was dead when we buried her." Rehan shouted, his voice echoing through the graveyard. "She was buried alive." The others gasped, and died. Autopsy was ordered immediately. The body was taken back to the hospital where she had been declared dead. Rehan went with it. He wanted answers. Hours passed. Finally, the doctor came out, face pale, eyes nervous. "Mr. Rehan, we reviewed the body, and the report says she died of heart failure, but the truth is..." The doctor hesitated. There were signs of oxygen loss, panic. Her heart gave out inside the coffin. Rehan's hands trembled. "So she wasn't dead when you buried her?" The doctor looked down. "She might have gone into a coma. Her heartbeat was too faint to detect, but yes, she was still alive." Rehan stared at him. His voice broke. "She called out to me 1 month later, from under the soil." The doctor shook his head in disbelief. "Medically, that's not possible." "It happened," Rehan said quietly. "And now I want to know why. Why did she die like this? Who signed that paper? Who made that decision?" Back at home, Rehan was sleepless. He sat in Anaya's room, surrounded by her things. Her perfume still lingered in the air. He opened her closet, searching for something, anything that could explain this nightmare, and then he found it. A journal. Anaya's handwriting. The last few pages were strange. "I feel weak these days, like something's wrong inside me. But the doctors say I'm fine. Why do I keep seeing that man in the black coat near our house? If something happens to me suddenly, tell Rehan I loved him, but not everything is as it seems. And finally, I'm scared. I think someone wants me gone." Rehan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "What were you trying to tell me, Anaya?" Just then, a loud knock echoed at his door. He rushed to open it, but no one was there. Only an envelope on the floor. Inside was a single photo of Anaya, standing with a man he had never seen before. On the back, in her handwriting, Rehan sat frozen on the couch. The photograph in his hand trembled between his fingers. It was a picture of Anaya, smiling, standing beside a tall man with a dark beard wearing a black coat. They looked familiar. Too familiar. Like they knew each other very well. On the back of the photo, Anaya had written, "Find him. Before he finds you." Rehan read those words again and again. "Who is he?" he whispered. "Why would Anaya leave this for me?" He placed the photo beside Anaya's journal and stared at the wall in silence. His heart wasn't just broken anymore. It was full of questions. The next morning, Rehan went to the hospital again. He needed to speak to the nurse who had taken care of Anaya in her final days. He met Nurse Shaista, an elderly woman who had been with Anaya for her last 3 checkups. Rehan showed her the photo. Her eyes widened the moment she saw it. "Sir, I know this man," she said softly. "Who is he?" Rehan asked quickly. "He's Dr. Farid, a visiting consultant. He worked here 3 months ago, only for a short time." Rehan felt his blood run cold. "Did he treat my wife?" Shaista hesitated. He wasn't her official doctor, but he used to come during her checkups, talk to her alone many times. We all thought he was a friend of the family." Rehan clenched his fists. "I've never met him in my life. Something wasn't right. Why was a strange doctor secretly meeting his wife? And more importantly, where was he now?" Rehan hired a private investigator that same day. Within 2 days, they found something strange. "Sir, Dr. Farid left the country 1 month ago," the investigator said. "Right after your wife's funeral. Where did he go?" "No idea, but he sold his car, closed his bank accounts, and vanished, almost like he was running from something." Rehan's head was spinning. He remembered Anaya's words in her journal. "I feel like someone wants me gone." What had happened in those last days? What had she discovered? Why had no one listened? That night, Rehan returned home and sat in front of Anaya's wardrobe again. He opened every drawer, checked every pocket, flipped through every book. Hours passed. Finally, behind a shelf in her closet, he found something taped to the wood, a small USB drive. He plugged it into his laptop, his hands trembling. Inside was a single video file. He clicked it. It was a video diary. Anaya's face filled the screen. Her eyes looked tired, but her voice was clear. "Rehan, if you're watching this, it means I'm either gone or something happened to me. There's a man named Dr. Farid. He used to be my friend in college, but something changed. He started following me, threatening me. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to worry. I thought I could handle it, but now, I think he's trying to harm me." Tears streamed down Rehan's face as he watched her speak. "He knows my medical history. He knows how to fake a death. If I die suddenly, please don't believe. Do you find the truth and protect yourself?" The video ended. Rehan sat still for several minutes, unable to move. "She tried to warn me," he whispered. "She knew he was planning something." Now he understood. Anaya hadn't died from illness. She had been murdered. Slowly, silently, by someone who used medicine as a weapon, and then buried. Alive. Rehan stood up, a storm rising in his chest. "I swear, Anaya, I'll get justice for you." Just then, his phone rang. It was the investigator. "Sir, there's something else." "What now?" "We traced a call. Dr. Farid contacted someone in the city just 2 days ago." "I thought he left the country?" "That's what we thought. But we just tracked him. He's still here, and he's been watching you." Rehan's hand tightened around the phone. "Where is he?" "He's staying in a private guest house under a fake name. Room 302. Rehan didn't wait. He grabbed his coat, the photo, and the USB, and headed straight to the location. Outside the guest house, the night was silent. Rehan stood before the door of room 302, his hand inches away from the handle. He took a deep breath, then knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Rehan stepped inside slowly, only to find the room empty, except for one thing. A note on the table. It read, "You're too late, Rehan, but the game has just begun." The guest house room was silent, too silent. Rehan stepped further inside, his eyes scanning every corner. There were no bags, no clothes, no signs of anyone living here, just a table and a note. "You're too late, Rehan, but the game has just begun." The handwriting was familiar, neat, cold. Rehan clenched the paper tightly. His heartbeat raced. His chest felt heavy. He had been just moments away from facing the man who ruined his life, Dr. Farid. Rehan sat on the edge of the bed, trying to think clearly. The room might be empty, but it could still hold clues. He checked drawers, opened cabinets, even looked under the bed. Nothing. But then, he noticed something strange. A mirror on the wall was cracked. Not shattered, just a small crack near the bottom. He walked closer. Behind the mirror frame, barely taped, was a torn piece of paper. He pulled it out. It was part of a boarding. Farid had booked a train, departing the next morning to another city. The destination was written clearly, Rahatnagar. Rehan knew that town. It was small, quiet, and far from attention. "He's running again," Rehan whispered. "But this time I'm not staying behind." That night, Rehan didn't sleep. He returned home and sat in front of Anaya's photo. "He's scared," he said softly. "That's why he keeps running, but now I have your words, your voice, your truth." He replayed the video diary once more. Each word from Anaya felt like a whisper from beyond the grave. Her pain, her fear, her silent scream for help. Rehan made a promise. "I won't stop until he pays for what he did to you." By sunrise, Rehan was on the train, a long, quiet journey to Rahatnagar. As the train passed through empty fields and lonely towns, he thought about his wife. Their memories, their last conversation. How had he not seen her fear? How had he missed the signs? But guilt had no place now, only justice did. He reached Rahatnagar by afternoon. The investigator had already sent him an address, a small farmhouse, outside the main town. It was registered under a false name, but the caretaker had confirmed a man in a black coat had checked in just yesterday. Rehan hired a local taxi and gave the driver the location. The ride was silent. Trees lined the narrow road. Fog hovered in the air. It was the kind of place where secrets were buried easily. Finally, the car stopped outside the farmhouse, a rusted gate, broken windows, but a car was parked inside and a black SUV. "He's here," Rehan whispered. He stepped out, heart pounding. He walked to the front door and knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. Still silence. But then he heard it. Footsteps. Inside. Very slow. Very controlled. And then the door opened. There he was, Dr. Farid, wearing the same black coat as in the photo. His face was calm, cold, unbothered. "You found me," Farid said. "I expected you would." Rehan stared at him, fire in his eyes. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you kill her?" Farid smiled, a strange, twisted smile. "She wasn't supposed to die," he said. "She was supposed to suffer." Rehan stepped forward. "You buried her alive." Farid didn't deny it. "She rejected me, years ago, chose you. But I waited, I planned, and when I saw she was sick, I made sure no one noticed she wasn't dead." Rehan's hands shook with rage. "You're a monster." Farid raised a small black bag from the table. "I'm a doctor, and I'm smarter than all of you." Rehan lunged forward, grabbing him by the collar. "You don't get to walk away." Farid laughed, quietly, coldly. "And what will you do? Kill me? Then you become me." Rehan didn't hit him. Instead, he pulled out his phone and pressed record. "Say it again," he said. "Say everything you did." Farid's smile faded. He tried to snatch the phone, but Rehan stepped back. "It's already backed up," he warned. "Even if you destroy this, the video will reach the police." Suddenly, footsteps approached from outside. The investigator and 2 police officers entered. "We have everything," the officer said. Farid was trapped. His eyes darted around, looking for a way out. But there was none. "You'll pay for this," he hissed at Rehan. Rehan looked at him, his voice steady. "No, you'll pay for her." Farid was arrested. Rehan gave the police the USB, the journal, the video diary, and the confession. The world would now know the truth. Anaya's voice, once buried beneath the soil, would finally be heard. That Night, Rehan stood once again at her grave. This time, with peace in his heart, he placed fresh white flowers on the soil. "You're free now," he whispered. As he turned to leave, a soft breeze brushed against his face, as if Anaya was saying goodbye. The courtroom was silent. Rehan sat in the front row, holding a photo of Anaya close to his chest. Her soft smile, her gentle eyes, now framed in a wooden picture he refused to let go of. Across the room, Dr. Farid sat behind the glass, handcuffed, expressionless. The trial had begun. But for Rehan, it wasn't about winning a case. It was about giving Anaya a voice, the voice she was never allowed to raise while alive. The judge looked down from her bench. "Mr. Rehan, please come forward." Rehan stood. He walked slowly to the stand, his steps heavy but steady. "Tell us, what made you believe your wife didn't die of natural causes?" Rehan placed the USB on the table. "Because she told me herself," he said, in her own words, in her final video diary. The courtroom listened as the screen lit up. Anaya's face appeared, and her voice echoed through the room. She spoke about the fear, the threats, the betrayal. She told them how Farid had manipulated her medical reports. She told them how she felt she was being drugged, silenced, erased. Gasps filled the courtroom. Even the judge blinked twice, shaken by the raw pain in Anaya's eyes. The prosecution presented more evidence. The altered medical files, Farid's travel history, the boarding pass, the secret house, and most importantly, the confession recording. It was clear now, Farid had used his medical knowledge not to heal, but to harm. He had buried a woman, alive, to punish her for loving someone else, and he would have gotten away with it if Rehan hadn't listened to the voice beneath the soil. After the session ended, Rehan stepped out into the fresh air. His heart was still heavy. Justice was close, but the pain remained. Anaya wasn't coming back, but her story, her truth, was now alive in the world. That evening, Rehan visited a local school for orphaned girls. He had started a small trust in Anaya's name, the Anaya Foundation, giving forgotten voices a future. He watched as the girls sang softly in the Yao courtyard, some shy, some smiling, some barefoot just like Anaya had once been in her dreams. One little girl, around 9 years old, came up to him and said, "Uncle, did you know the woman in that video?" She was very brave. Rehan smiled with tears in his eyes. "Yes, Beta, she was my wife, and she gave me the strength to never give up." Back in court, Farid's lawyer tried one last trick. "My client had mental health issues," the lawyer argued. He didn't know what he was doing, but the judge wasn't fooled. She stared directly at Farid. This wasn't madness, this was cruelty, cold and planned, and with a firm voice she said, "You are hereby sentenced to life in prison, without parole." The courtroom erupted in quiet applause. Rehan closed his eyes, not out of joy, but relief. The voice from the grave had finally been heard. After the trial, Rehan stood once more by Anaya's grave. This time he didn't come with pain, but with peace. "I did it, Anaya," he whispered. "I found the truth. I gave you back your voice." He placed a small white stone on the headstone engraved with words, "Your silence shook the world. Your voice still lives here." A breeze blew gently across the grass. The flowers danced. Rehan closed his eyes and felt it, a warmth on his face, like a hand, like Anaya was still near. That night, Rehan shared Anaya's story online. He didn't post it as a tragedy, but as a message for every woman who's unheard, every person whose pain is invisible. "If you feel like no one is listening," he wrote, "remember, one voice is enough to break silence." The video went viral within hours. Thousands. Women shared their stories. The world began to talk, to listen, to care, and through every comment, every message, Anaya's voice lived on. Weeks had passed since the courtroom verdict. Rehan tried to return to a normal life, But everything had changed. The world had heard Anaya's story. Her face was now a symbol of courage. People from across the country sent messages of support, thanking Rehan for sharing her voice, for standing up when no one else would. But deep inside, Rehan still felt empty. Justice had been served, but the woman he loved was still gone. One cold morning, Rehan sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the window. A delivery boy knocked at the door. "Parcel for Mr. Rehan." Rehan took the package, a small brown box, no sender name. Curious, he opened it. Inside was a single envelope, old, yellowed, and addressed to him in Anaya's handwriting. His hands trembled as he held it. How was this possible? He opened it slowly and began to read. "My dearest Rehan, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it, and I'm sorry. I knew something was wrong. I knew someone wanted to silence me. But I didn't want to worry you. So I wrote this letter and gave it to our lawyer, to send to you in case anything ever happened to me. You always said I was strong. But Rehan, it was your love that made me brave. If I'm no longer there to hold your hand, I want this letter to do it for me. Promise me something, Rehan. Promise me you won't let this darkness take you. Promise me you'll keep helping those who have no one to speak for them. And promise me you'll live. Not just survive, really live. Fall in love with life again. Smile again. Dream again. That's how you'll keep me alive. I love you. Forever and always. Anaya." Rehan sat frozen. Tears rolled silently down his cheeks. It was like hearing her voice again, gentle, strong, full of love. He held the letter to his chest as if trying to feel her heartbeat through it. That night, Rehan lit a candle and sat beside her grave. He read the letter aloud, one line at a time, his voice shaking but calm. "You were right," he said softly. "I've been drowning in sadness, but today you pulled me out." He looked up at the stars. They seemed brighter that night. The next morning, Rehan called a meeting at the Anaya Foundation. The children gathered, along with volunteers, teachers, and local press. He stood on the small stage and held up the letter. "This," he said, "is a message from someone who lived with courage and died because of cruelty." He paused. But her words didn't end in the grave. Her love is still with us, and it's our duty to carry it forward. The crowd clapped. Some cried. Some just listened in silence. "So from today," Rehan said, "we're expanding our work. The foundation would now provide shelter to abused women, offer scholarships to orphan girls, open a free legal help center for those fighting injustice." Rehan called it Anaya's Voice, a new chapter in her legacy. That evening, a reporter asked him, "Do you still miss her?" Rehan smiled gently. "Every single day," he said. "But I don't feel lost anymore. I feel her in every girl we help, every smile we save." Later that week, while cleaning the storage room at home, Rehan found an old camera. He plugged it in. Inside was one last video he had never seen. He pressed play. Anaya appeared, laughing, holding the camera with one hand, sitting on their balcony. "Hey, future Rehan," she said playfully. "If you're watching this, you better not be crying all the time, okay?" She smiled at the camera, then became serious. "Promise me you'll live boldly, love deeply, and never stop singing our song." The video ended. Rehan closed his eyes. She had left him many things, but above all, she had left him with hope. That night, as Rehan looked out his window, he didn't feel alone. Some voices don't die. Some stories never end. They just keep whispering. In the wind, in the stars, in the hearts of those they touched. 1 year. Later, the city had changed. A little brighter, a little kinder. But more than the city, Rehan had changed. He was no longer the silent man who used to visit the grave with trembling hands. He was now a man with a purpose and a promise. The Anaya Foundation had grown. Girls from all over the country lived there now, safe, warm, and dreaming again. And every room had one rule. You are allowed to speak. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to live. That evening, Rehan sat in the recording room of the Foundation's new media center. It had been built to help girls express themselves through art, music, or stories. On the wall behind him were pictures of smiling girls. But at the center was a photo of Anaya, still smiling, still shining. Rehan switched on the mic. "This is for you," he whispered, and he began to play a song. It was the song Anaya used to hum while watering plants, while cooking, while dancing around their old living room. She never recorded it, but Rehan remembered every note. His fingers touched the piano keys softly, and the music filled the air. The room was quiet, but outside the girls had gathered. They sat on the floor, listening through the hallway speakers. Some closed their eyes, some wiped their tears, some just smiled, as if they knew Anaya too. As the song ended, Rehan looked up. "You gave me love, Anaya," he said aloud, "and I gave your voice to the world." He paused. "Now it's time to sing the last song, not of pain, but of peace." The next day, Rehan visited the grave again. This time, he didn't bring flowers. He brought something else, a small metal plate engraved with golden letters. He placed it at the head of the grave and read it slowly. Anaya Rehan. Her voice changed. The world. She was never buried. She was planted. And then, something beautiful happened. A little girl from the Foundation, one who had never spoken in public, stepped forward. She held a flower and said quietly, "Thank you, Anaya." "Auntie, because of you, I found my voice." Rehan looked up, eyes filled with tears. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was saying goodbye. He felt like he was saying, "Thank you." 1 month later, a documentary titled "The Voice Beneath the Soil" was released on YouTube and major platforms. It told Anaya's full story, from the love to the loss, the silence to the scream, the grave to the courtroom. It featured real footage, Rehan's narration, and voices from the Foundation girls. Within days, it went viral. Millions watched. Thousands shared their own stories in the comments. And at the end of the video, one sentence appeared, "This is not the end. This is the beginning of every unheard story." Later that year, Rehan sat at a live event. He had been invited to speak. Journalists called him the man who dug up the truth. But he said nothing grand on stage. He just held up Anaya's letter and said, "If you've ever felt unheard, if you've ever been told to stay silent, just remember, even a whisper can break a wall, and even from a grave, love can speak." The crowd stood, not in applause, but in respect. That night, Rehan returned home. He stood at the balcony, where Anaya had once recorded that playful video. The wind was soft, the moon was full, and in the silence he closed his eyes and heard it. A voice, not from beneath the soil, but from deep within his heart. "I'm proud of you, Rehan," it said. "You kept singing even when the world went quiet."